Okay, so this is a fun little podcast where we talk to game industry legends and just people who really have made a living inside of the game industry. And I have with me Jay Armstrong, and my name is Thomas Brush, and I'm the creator of Pinstripe and Once Upon a Coma. If you guys have not played those games, you can take a look at the links in the description below. They're highly acclaimed games. Time Magazine had a really good time with it, and Washington Post was another magazine that had a really good time with the game. So that's just me trying to, I guess, provide a little bit of credibility to who I am and what this podcast is all about. Now, Jay Armstrong is one of the nicest guys I've ever met, for one. I've been thinking about having him on this podcast for like 2 years. I've been thinking about this podcast for that long, and I knew I wanted Jay Armstrong on this podcast. But Jay just released, I guess it's your first commercial release, correct, Jay?
That's correct.
Okay, first commercial indie game, and that is called Adventure Pals. So Jay, do you want to explain a little bit about Adventure Pals and who you are?
Yeah, sure. So as you said, I'm Jay Armstrong. I'm a co-founder of Massive Monster, a small game development studio spread kind of across the world. We've just literally less than 2 months ago put out a game called The Adventure Pals, which has also been doing really well. It's our first commercial release. Super excited about it. We're lucky enough for it to be on PC and Mac, but Xbox, PlayStation, and Switch. And we did that all as a simultaneous release, which was...
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so the dust is settling now. But the game, you play as a young boy on a quest to rescue his dad from being turned into a hot dog. But fear not, you have your best friend, Sparkles, the magical giraffe, who lives in your backpack, and your pet rock, Mr. Rock. And on it, you go on this huge adventure to rescue him. And it's kind of like a platforming game wrapped in a kind of RPG-light experience. And it's just full of like wacky characters and a sense of humor and just like a lot of bright cartoony graphics. Yeah,
it's super beautiful. Like I first saw the game, I think it was 2 years ago probably, when you and I met, when we were at, where were we? Were we at PAX when we met in
PAX
person?
East, yeah, in Boston.
We were in Boston at PAX East, and I saw the game, and like my game was next to yours because we were both with the same publisher. And I looked at your game, and I honestly, dude, I was like, why am I signed with this publisher? Because I'm next to this incredible game. Like it looked super beautiful, and what really stuck out to me was like the game feel. Like everything was so poppy and snappy. And then my game was kind of, it was like a super alpha build at that time. So I don't know. I was certainly jealous.
I was
certainly jealous of what you
come in and tell you to stop being so modest. Like we were sort of stood by yours, going like, "Oh my God, look at that! That is beautiful." And like people would walk by and they'd be like, "Okay, yeah, that looks like Adventure Time. That looks kind of fun. Oh my goodness, what is this game? Pinstripe." And you had the beautiful like camera effects that like kind of we hadn't put our game into Unity yet, so it was very flat. But you had all this kind of depth and blurred edges, and it just looked like a living storybook. Which was also, I've got like you're very kind to me in your introduction, and likewise, I really respect you, and I've kind of followed your work for such a long time. So for me, it's awesome to be able to. We do talk like a little peek behind the curtain. You and I kind of chat quite a lot, but it's nice to kind of sit down and have a conversation about indie game development and the industry and making things, and hopefully we'll share a few secrets with each other and stuff like that. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, dude, absolutely. So a tradition I want to start with this podcast is we drink beer together, because beer is fun and it makes you have better conversations, at least if you have maybe one or two. So I was wondering, did you bring a beer to the show?
I did, and you said to bring your favorite beer. So I'm currently in Vancouver, in Canada, and it's a town that loves its craft breweries. And this is a place that I've visited. It's a really cool place called Red Truck Brewery, and this is their lager. So this is Red Truck Lager.
Oh, nice. Well, I got with me Elysian Space Dust. I don't know if they sell this anywhere.
Wow.
Is
that just
near
beer? It sounds like a kind of psychotic.
It kind of looks like it kind of looks like a psychotic beer. Like it looks like a psychedelic drug. But it's a high gravity beer at the very least. It's so if I can drink one beer, I'm good. I've got a nice little buzz going.
Oh, nice.
But that is my favorite beer currently this week. It's super hoppy. and it's an IPA. So, dude, do you want to crack them open on the count of 3?
I do. Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. 3, 2, 1. Oh, that's beautiful.
Beautiful sound.
Yeah, that'll wake you up. It's funny. My daughter, she doesn't really wake up to anything. Like my dog will bark like crazy, and she won't wake up. But if I crack open a beer, she wakes up immediately.
She's like, "Stop having fun, Dad."
Exactly. I think she wants some. Anyway, dude, cheers.
Cheers.
All right.
Cheers.
Oh, that's good. Okay, so let's talk, dude. I have so many questions for you that they've just been running through my head all day, and I'm afraid we might talk for like 3 hours, but and maybe we will. But
Janice, clear my schedule.
Do you have a secretary named Janice?
In my head.
Yeah. I wish I had an office assistant that could just answer emails for me, because I was thinking about it. I was actually meeting with one of my advisors yesterday about making some hires for the company, because
that's exciting.
Yeah, so like it's just me right now, and I don't know if that's the case for you right now.
Very briefly, so Massive Monster is myself, Jimp, and we also work in association with Julian, and Julian was the artist on the Adventure Pals.
Right, that's right. Yeah. So like for me, like I'm very picky with artwork and art style and music, and like if you guys take a look at Pinstripe or Once Upon a Coma, you'll see that the styles are very consistent. The music and the artwork is all very cohesive.
I think that's what keeps people coming back. Like they know it's a Thomas Brush game. Your name's like above the name of the game, and it's like I know what this experience will be, and I want it.
Right. Yeah, that's just because I'm an egomaniac, but but really, like it's hard for me because I've got to find some help, but I don't know where to find that help. And I think just filling up position of answering emails, and social media management, and having a Janice would certainly be helpful. I mean, do you ever feel that way? Like you're actually not working on your game, you're just working on your business?
Yeah, that's definitely a really tough thing to deal with. We have had times where we've kind of had, say, people before they start their university course, if they've got a free summer, they've kind of come in, and they've been really wonderful. We've been lucky that they've been good people, but they've also been so helpful to do things like queue up like little videos for Twitter every day, or like a reset. Like if we're going to an event, could you please find out who else is going and try and like give us collect some email addresses. We'll do all the kind of emailing, but if you could just quickly do that for us, I mean, that's really helpful. Just all those stuff with the kind of the financials. That's not sort of stuff that I would be keen to kind of share, kind of give someone else control of. But yeah, it's a full-time job running a business, definitely. And the fact that you're making music, doing art, and coding, and making the games and selling the games. I don't know how you find time to do all of that. I find like having a business partner has been really good, because a couple of times when I've not been available, they've been able to there's been an example where recently we had to do all our taxes, and it's a huge couple-day job, and a few things were going on. We were trying to get Adventure Pals finished, and he's like, "Look, I got this. You just finished the game." Yeah, that's awesome. That sort of thing is so helpful. Sorry.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
No, I understand finding a partner and finding someone to work for you are very different things.
Yeah, it really is. And my question for you is, to get back to the Adventure Pals, you did a simultaneous launch. Now, that means you launched on Nintendo Switch, Xbox, PS4, PC and Mac, and that's Steam and GOG, I assume.
Yes.
Dude, that's insane. Like that is, and you've got such a small team. I mean, most indie teams are small, but yours is small. Like what did that feel like? What, like emotionally, like were you like freaking out?
Yeah, and I think it wasn't just me. It was, I think everyone around us was freaking out as well. Yeah. Although Armor Games were fantastic, there was definitely some close calls with some without kind of just trying to be careful with what I say in terms of NDAs. Like we can't announce a release date until we are cleared through some processes with various platforms and things like that. So trying to balance all of those different platforms, and then problems that might occur on one thing but not another, So we might get through on one thing, but not another one. But would that hold back the release of the first one? And just trying to balance all of that stuff was really crazy. But also, our game was like, it didn't really kind of all come together as a cohesive unit until very, very close, like much too far at the end. So that I was kind of handling that. And then we had Matt Tai, who I know you know very well, doing kind of the technical side. And he was just kind of unflappable. So he was really kind of a rock for that. Like he was just...
Yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah, he was delivering builds and just getting it done and optimizing and across all these different platforms. And so like, I think for us, I'm so glad we did do that, because I know that, trying to market one version, having it everywhere at the same time kind of helps, so if I've got it on PlayStation and I tell my friend about it, but he or she's only got an Xbox, they can then get it. And there's no kind of like, oh, they got to wait 6 months and then they'll forget about it kind of thing. So I'm really glad we did it that way. I know it was more stressful for some people than for others. And I hope we can do it again that way, but I'm pretty sure some people will be less keen on us doing it that way.
Yeah. Well, what's your personality like, dude? Are you the guy that stresses out and can't sleep at night? Or are you the guy who's got it all together and tells everybody to calm down?
I think I'm a bit of both, I think. Like internally, I'll be like kind of very stressed out. And then there are other things that don't phase me, and I kind of go, oh my God, I should be worrying about this. I think there's like a part of my brain that isn't totally like functional in terms of some risks, but other risks keep me up at night. So it's very difficult. And I think it's really hard to maintain that like sense of strength, which people need. Like I need someone, when I talk to someone with a problem, I need them to be strong for me. And I then, when they have a problem, I need to be strong for them. But if I'm flapping and panicked about the thing and they're not there for me, I can't be there for them. So it's really difficult. But I think like overall it all went pretty smoothly. We had a long kind of window to get everything together, and it was just kind of, I think every launch of a game is probably madness in its own way.
Well, I think a lot of people don't fully understand why a launch is stressful, especially if you're not involved. Like you're just like, well, just patch it if it breaks.
Right.
And like I had a lot of people, close friends and family, just say, like, this was like 2 years before I launched Pinstripe. They were like, just launch the game. And I had been working on it 3 years at that point. And I was like, no, like it's not perfect. Like I can't launch it. And they're like, why can't you just launch it and patch it later? And I said, because it's like the Titanic. Like if you're setting sail, you better hope that there are no holes, because this is your one shot. And that's how important launch is. You have to have a good launch week. Now, I think things are a little bit different, maybe a little different than they were like a decade ago, because if you launched, let's for example, like a PS2 or PS3 a decade ago, I don't know, or maybe even PlayStation. If you launched a PlayStation game, you better make sure that it was perfect. But now you can patch things, but there still is that sense of wanting to make sure that it's absolutely perfect, because you have to make a splash in the ocean of Steam. You've got like 7,000 games released in a year. I think that's what the number was. So you better make sure that your game is perfect when you launch it, because this is your one shot to make a splash.
I think that number has gone up pretty significantly now as well. So I absolutely agree with you. And you see friends and their games come out and they get like a few bad reviews, and that puts off so many people.
It does. It really does.
How did you find yours? Because your reviews are pretty universally positive, as they should be. But were you kind of launching and then patching like every few hours? Because I would say that I kind of had the first patch up within a few hours of the game being out.
So this might sound like narcissistic, but I didn't need to patch anything. The reason was because I'm not like you, dude. Like I'm really anxious. Like I had like pretty bad anxiety for like 3 years. This was before Pinstripe launched. For some reason, I got it under control in the most stressful time of my life. But my anxiety would make me over prepare. So I did so much QA. I outsourced a ton of QA. So everything was like we basically had a soft launch with beta testers. We had like a couple hundred beta testers test the game, and every little glitch that showed up, I fixed. So when we launched the game, I wasn't really nervous about glitches. I did get a crash report, and that freaked me out, because when you get a crash report in beta testing, you're like, okay, what percentage of the market is this crash? Is it all PCs or is it all Macs? What is it? So I got a crash report, but fortunately that didn't affect the launch. So yeah, like we launched and everything was really solid. But you're still anxious, because when you launch a game, you've been dreaming about this moment for years, right?
Right.
And you hit that launch button, and you're not getting reviews in. Like you have like one review in, and you're like, what the hell? Like, is nobody playing my game? And like by the end of the first week, you only have like 20 reviews. And that really freaked me out. Fortunately, like I think Pinstripe is performing better than most indie games. It's not like a Toby Fox game. It's not Undertale or anything, but it's performing pretty good, and it's got a 9 out of 10, which I noticed you have a 9 out of 10 as well on Steam, which, congratulations, that's a huge achievement.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. So, but yeah, that first week that was the hardest week of my life.
The experience of launching and that roller coaster that you have, couple of days after we launched, and actually I'm sounding very down. I'm really happy actually with the way Adventure Pals is doing, and we can come back to that later. But you reached out to me and just went, "Hey man, are you okay?" And and then I just like unleashed like all this stuff that I'd been holding in, like, "Oh, I feel this way," and "What was it like for you? Is this normal?" Like, what, and that was really powerful of you to do. And actually since then I've done that to a couple of other developers.
Oh yeah.
And I've had similar responses. So it's like it's almost like a club, like, oh, you've been through that too. I know what you're about to go through.
Yeah.
I know what you're going to go through. I'll be waiting, and I'll have a shoulder for you to cry on, kind of thing.
And I think it has to do with really setting expectations, because some of the indie developers, including myself, they're still, for some reason, they're riding high off of the indie game documentary, and they're like, this is going to happen. You're still like you said, you're like, that won't happen to me. But deep down, you're like, that's going to happen to me.
Right.
And so you're waiting and you don't know what to expect. And I think it's important for indie developers to know what to expect. You should expect $100,000 in sales perhaps in a year, and you're not going to get all that. And if you have a publisher, they're going to take some of it. And that's kind of depressing, because it's like, well, how on earth do you survive? And the way that you survive, and that wasn't the case for me, I'm just throwing out a random number. But the way, like you said, the way that you survive is you keep making games, right? So like the shelf life of a game is, I've heard it's like 3 years on Steam. They can stay greener, for longer, but I think 3 years is probably the shelf life of an indie game, where it's giving you consistent like sales numbers that you can predict. Now, if you can release a game every 2 years, then eventually you're going to stack up enough games, right? But if you release a game every 3 years, you're only going to have one game released every 3 years, and that's not going to work. So the question is, how on earth do you hire somebody and pay them a salary to help you release more games? That's the conundrum. I guess that's the conundrum for any business owner, is how do you afford to pay somebody like a legit salary, like a game developer? How do you afford to pay them a salary?
That's it. I think you need to either put them on points or put them on like a project basis, where it's like, I'm going to hire you for 3 months for this project.
Yeah.
And, but like just a rolling salary, I think once you're in a position to do that, then you are you're doing pretty well. You're up there with the Chucklefishes and the Clays of this world.
Yep. Which, wouldn't that be wonderful?
But
so you're saying the work that you've hired out for Adventure Pals, it was contracted? Yeah,
absolutely. So we'd say like, oh, we need help getting these backgrounds done in time. We know just the person to go to, or we look for people. And then we get in touch and we're like, this is the work we'd like to do. We'd like to pay you this much. And they usually come back like, yeah, that's great. And then they do it. And it's just like hiring like musicians to write the theme tune. But we've done that with like a lot of the kind of animation and the background artwork and a lot of the elements to the project.
Okay. Very good.
We haven't actually done any kind of like, we'll give you 5% if you do X, Y, Z, because I think that is quite hard, particularly with indie games. Like, I think you could either, it's almost a bit irresponsible because you might lead people to believe, oh, this is going to make $5 million. And they're like, well, 5% of 5 million. Okay, great. So I think that is kind of a dangerous thing to, or they've been there and they've seen it and they're like 5% of nothing. No thanks. So
well, I was building out sorry to interrupt you. I was building out a business plan this week on Monday. I spent 5 or 6 hours writing out a business plan. And I was following a template that business owners should be using, and one of the sections was like projections. And the problem with the indie game market and projections, or just the video game industry itself and projections, is it's so hard to predict because it's changing constantly. It's always changing. Yeah. So like something I did before Pinstripe launched, I was like, okay, if I can get Jacksepticeye to play Pinstripe, which he did. And I'm like, if he gets 1 million views or like 4 million views, because sometimes he gets 4 million views, then if I can get 1% of that, I'll be sitting pretty, or 2% of those views to buy the game, I'll be sitting pretty. So I'd calculate those numbers and I'd tell my wife, and I'm like, look, babe, we're going to be okay for the next year. Look how much money we're going to make. And it didn't pan out that way. Yeah, I don't know why. Like Jacksepticeye played the game, Game Grumps played the game, Matt Pat, I think he played the game. I think he played your game too, right?
Matt Pack?
I think that's his name, yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, he played Pinstripe as well. So I had all these YouTubers playing the game, and they didn't translate to sales. Like, I have no idea why. So my point there is that any sort of projections or predictions about how your game's going to do, they just don't really work. And like, you're like, okay, I'm going to get a PC Gamer article because I had confirmation that PC Gamer was going to do a feature. I have never seen those do that much. Like they give it credibility, but they don't really translate to sales.
I found that most of our print articles were before the game, like significantly before the game launched, and then after the game. I think it's so much more exciting to be like, oh, look at this game that's coming out. It's going to be amazing. And then once it's out, they're kind of like, oh, look at the next game. It's going to be even better. Yeah. So I think, but we've recently had Dan TDM, like as of last week or the week before, start a video series on the Adventure Pals. But we've seen huge.
No way.
Yeah, we've seen a huge pickup from that.
Oh, dude, congrats.
Thank you. Which has been like, which has been amazing. Which is kind of like, just not to kind of go like, oh, you didn't, oh, look at us, we got results from it. But it just goes to the unpredictability of it, because we're lucky that he did do it, and we haven't had all the guys that you've had do it, but for some reason he did, and it fit with his audience. And it's 3 videos so far. Hopefully he keeps doing it. It's been a huge boost. It's been fantastic. But
wow.
But like, we couldn't have predicted that. We didn't know if he was going to do it. We didn't know how many people would do it. And maybe after we finish recording, we can work out the conversion rate for his views.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if I can say that on the podcast. But
right.
It's been really good, and it's just so hard to know. And the other things are, there's so many other variables, like how long the game's going to take, right? The platform. This is something that's really interesting for that I've seen, like going into it blind, not knowing the different platforms that well. Like, I don't have an Xbox or a PlayStation. I only bought a Switch because the game was coming out on Switch, and I was like, oh, it'd be so cool to download the game on launch day, kind of thing. But it's interesting. Our game is like so cartoony, so family friendly, that our Metacritic on PC is much lower than it is, say, on the Switch, because on the Switch, people, they're starved for games. Like, it's also co-op, so you can use the physical makeup of the Switch is useful, because you can just pop them off and 2 people can play. But whereas PC market, they kind of want serious stuff and deeper kind of things, like kind of more RPG kind of type of games, darker as well. So seeing the different platforms is really interesting, and seeing like which ones have done better than others is also something that you can't write a business plan for that. Like, when we started the Adventure Pals, the Switch wasn't even a glimmer in someone's eye. Like, it didn't exist. And it was, and I think they're probably working on it in secret, but we never could have known that. So yeah, you just can't, it's just so difficult. And it makes it so hard when you're talking with family or with my wife about like, well, what do you think it's going to do? You know, how's it going to do? Like we had this conversation at Christmas before launch.
Yeah.
And I was like, there's a reason I've got a few gray hairs. Like, I don't know. It's stressful. I don't know. Don't ask me. It's coming out soon. Let's figure it out when it comes out.
Most people in their, in their jobs, they're like, okay, I'm going to make $55,000 this year. Like if you're right out of college or something, $55,000 this year. And I have potential to get a 10% raise next year. So that's their like internal projection. But for people like you and me, it's like I could make $10,000 this year or 10 million. You know?
Yeah.
You have no, like, it's so polarized.
Yeah.
You have no idea how much you're going to make. And that stresses you out. Like, and I have the same conversations with my wife. Like, fortunately, it sounds like your wife is similar to mine, where she's encouraging and will just say like my wife is like, I don't care how much it makes. Like, I'm just happy that you're following your dream. And that feels amazing. I mean, she was pregnant last year.
Yeah.
And I was like, we weren't making that much money off Pinstripe. And I was like, I don't know how we're going to do next year. I don't know if we're going to be able to make it, especially with a kid. And she was the one talking me down. You know, I wasn't the one who had to tell her to calm down or something. It was me who needed to calm down. And, you know, things worked out.
That is so valuable to have her believe in you.
Yeah, it's an amazing feeling. And it's weird. Once my daughter Liv was born, like for some reason, all the stress went away. I don't know why. I think once you bear enough responsibility on your shoulders, like a certain weight of responsibility on your shoulders, everything suddenly goes void. You just you don't care anymore. Like at least that's the way it is for me. I'm not as stressed as I used to be, even though things are a lot more stressful now and there's a lot more responsibility now.
Why is that? Is that just because you know who you're doing it for and you're doing it for Liv, or what is it?
No, I don't know. I think it might be instinctual. So people probably hate me for this, but I listen to Jordan Peterson. He's this weird like psychologist guy, and some people think he's too far right, or some people think he's crazy. But basically his concept is that evolutionarily, I don't know if that's a word, evolutionarily or instinctually, when men and women have responsibility put on their shoulders, suddenly they're joyful about it. When you're like the sense of being like having someone
purpose.
Having a purpose, or having someone rely on you,
yeah.
Suddenly the anxiety is gone. I've noticed that I've been way more anxious in my life when I don't really feel a purpose and when people aren't relying on me. When I'm comfortable and relaxed and everything's going great and I'm drinking beer and I have as much food as I want or as much money as I want and things are going great, suddenly I'm anxious and I can't sleep. But when things are tight and I have a daughter relying on me, and now my wife is relying on me because she's only working part-time now instead of full-time. She's like working a day a week as a nurse. Suddenly I'm not anxious. It's because I don't know, I feel responsible.
It's because you have you have a goal, you have a purpose, and you have a mission, and you're going to achieve that mission no matter what it takes. Like I often see like people, so like my wife just finished her PhD, and she had and we've come over to stay in Vancouver for a little while, and so she finished her PhD and was looking for a job here, and she's got a PhD, she's going to get a job. It's totally fine. And like we had a budget and we were going to be totally fine. She could take as long as she needed, but she found it very stressful. And I think it's like not having a purpose. So it's like, she'd just done something which was so stressful, but it was so fulfilling and made her so happy because she was doing something amazing and she was achieving it and she did it. And then it's like, you've got free time. And in your head, when you're working all hours, you're like, I'd love to just kick back and watch like 10 episodes of my favorite box set. But if you do that, you're just like, ooh, I feel guilty. I shouldn't be doing this. I should be doing something with my life. So I think maybe that's what it could be.
It probably is, and there's this person in my life who I won't mention who it is. And this individual has everything that they want. And they're comfortable and they spend most of their time just at home alone. And when I say they have what they want, I think they think they do. And they're always stressed about the dumbest things, like the laundry or like what they're going to eat for dinner. Like those things, for some reason, those things stress you out way more
I've got this
than like money when things are tight with money. I don't know why. It's like this sick American condition.
I think maybe it's just like a Western condition, because my brother and I talk about this a lot, and we kind of say like your problems are always relative to like the size of your world. So if you're sat at home all day and all you have to decide on is what you're having for dinner, that's pretty stressful. That's the only decision. That's the one decision you've got to make. And like things like where the tasks fill like the time you have allotted. So even if you've got like 3 days, it's going to take you 3 days. If you've got an hour, you're going to do it in an hour, kind of thing. So it's that thing where like your world really, like if you've got, you've got your wife and your daughter, and you need to provide for them by this amazing business that you've started and you're succeeding in. That's purpose, that's drive, and you're doing something and you're achieving it. And so little things, you don't have time to worry about what's for dinner. So I don't care, I'll make a sandwich, whatever. It's not important. This is what's important. Exactly.
I mean, did you, before you were married, you were running Massive Monster, correct?
Yes.
How did you have a shift in mentality when you got married? Like did the purpose of Massive Monster or the point of your career shift at all? I'm not saying it should. I don't know.
No, it's a good question. So Fiona and I have been together just over 10 years, and we've been married for a little less than 2. Okay. So I was living with her for years. Okay. But I think, like, as I mentioned, she was sort of doing a PhD. So a lot of the kind of, she had to travel to Africa a lot for that. So a lot of the kind of more risks went on while she was kind of away. Like we kind of took on various works and things, and I kind of got them done before, so that it wouldn't kind of be, I don't know if that's a good answer, but I would say so I would think that maybe if we when we have a kid, I think that will definitely like crystallize a lot of things.
Right, exactly. And for me, like this thought process of thinking my identity would be lost when I got married, or my identity would be lost when I had a kid, this is what gave me this massive sense of urgency when I was younger, because I knew I wanted to be own a video game company. That was my dream, and I knew I wanted to do that. But the moment I got married, and the moment I had a kid, I was like, that was all wrong. Like I was wrong in thinking that I would change, because that's just who I am. I'm a game developer deep down. I like to tell stories.
But maybe you met the right person who would support you in what you did. Maybe you met someone who's like, nope, time to become a doctor now. Put away your computer.
Right, exactly. And that's what kind of makes me think like it really is important who you surround yourself with as an entrepreneur.
Definitely.
I've been really intentional lately about I met this guy. He's like this really successful restaurant owner. He owns a bunch of pizza places in my city, and he's like super successful. And I met him at the pool, and I was like, I want to get to know this guy. So I just texted him. I got his number from a friend, and I texted him. I was like, I want you to tell me how you made money. And like my whole thought process there is, it doesn't matter what business they're running, whether it's an indie game studio or a pizza company. Like you need to make sure that you're spending time surrounding yourself with people who are successful, mainly because how you grade yourself is relevant to who they are and their grade. Yeah. So like, let's say this guy is like, I would give this guy an A+ because he's really successful. He's running these businesses and he's not stressed out and he has a family. Like he's a successful guy. If I didn't know this guy, I would grade myself as an A+. But now I'm an A, or an A-. And that's important because I want to grow and I want to become an A+. And I think that's why it's important to spend time with people, especially with people like you, to grow from them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they say you're the sum of the 4 people or the 5 people you hang out with the most. And if you're listening to this, think of the 4 or 5 people you hang out with the most, and that is absolutely true. Absolutely, 100% true. Yeah. And it's great that you can do this sort of podcast and, get people on who've had experiences and are doing things that not including myself, but like people who are much more successful, and kind of find out their secrets and just kind of, get to know them and yeah, like you say, grade yourself against them. And that's a really good kind of way to push yourself. I always find like whenever you have a problem, the best thing to do is find someone smarter than you and ask them to help you. And that
exactly,
is like,
dude.
it's so simple. Like just do that. Yeah.
Now, is there anyone, Jay, is there anyone that you reached out to prior to launching Adventure Pals, like an indie game developer or a studio of some kind, to help you know how to launch your game?
Yes. Well, more just like general, just like I kind of, similarly to you, like I kind of try to make a rule of finding successful game developers and trying to have a beer with them or a cup of coffee or lunch or something, whatever I can do.
Yeah.
So I've met, and I was kind of saving this to the cheat codes bit at the end, but I've met like a bunch of developers through events, but also whenever I move to an area, the first thing I do is like find out who's in the area making games and then send them an email. And the really cool thing is that if they're not too busy, they will get back to you. So
they really will. They want to help you. Yeah. Successful people want to help people. I don't know why, because you'd think really successful, wealthy people are like assholes, right. But they want to help you, which is crazy.
Sure, and I think they probably remember what it was like, or they had someone else do that mentor role. I think you've made it when someone asks you to be their mentor. So I mean, like, reached out to a bunch of people. I had lunch with Jamie from Clay, and he was just fantastic. I as I said, I'm currently in Vancouver. I sent him an email. He just like got back to me straight away and was like, "Sure, let's have lunch."
Wait, who is this? Jamie who?
Jamie Cheng from Clay. So
I see that my listeners probably know who that is. I don't know who that is.
Sorry.
Who is that?
Yeah, sorry. I was just like so like excited about it. I didn't think that no one else would know. So Jamie Cheng started Clay with one or two other people, I believe. They put out Don't Starve, along with.
Dude, you met that guy?
Yeah, along with Mark of the Ninja, Invisible Ink, a whole bunch of stuff, and that
that's awesome.
Is like. That's where I want Massive Monster to be. Like that, they are fantastic. They have great things like No Crunch. They put out amazing content that's interesting and always, they wouldn't, just put out another platform or another top-down roguelike. They're always creating something interesting and compelling. And like speaking with him, that is one of the things that they do. They have tons of ideas that they'll just chuck out because it's not interesting, it's not innovative. And one of the most important ways to get noticed is to do something interesting. But yeah,
Are there any things when you met with what was his name, Jamie? When you met with Jamie, did you leave the lunch or whatever like thinking, I'm doing it all wrong, like I'm totally missing the boat?
Yeah, I mean,
that's good,
Totally. Like I learned more from him in an hour and a half than I did like 3 years of running my own business. Like really, I think pretty quickly he realized I wasn't some like big shot game developer, but I was kind of on my way up kind of thing. I think like maybe the email I'd sent him was a little bit like upping myself. But he was brilliant. Like he was so much fun, and I like so grateful he took the time out. But I learned so much about how to run a game development business in literally like an hour and a half. And he really told me a few things that made me understand a few things about the way we've been doing things, about the kind of numbers we've been thinking of, and budgets and things like that, and kind of really gave me kind of a serious grounding. Although obviously he's in a huge, like much bigger league, but he's such a great guy. Turned out we went to rival schools, so like that.
No way.
Yeah, back in Hong Kong, I went to West Island School and he went to Island School.
Dude, you went to school in Hong Kong?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah. So
man, that's awesome.
Yeah, I was born in Hong Kong. I didn't move to England until I was 16, but I've got British parents.
What?
Yeah.
Wait. Okay, so this is something I wanted to talk to you about. Why Canada, right? You're living in Canada right now, or you're staying in Canada, right?
I'm currently staying in Canada, but I live in the UK.
Okay, yeah. So Can we talk about why you went to Canada?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So it just goes back to wanting a little bit of a change. I was working from a small cramped office in the south of England, and it was brilliant for a while. But it did kind of got a bit old, and we were working with some of the guys who were local there, other developers, and that sort of arrangement kind of fell apart a little bit, so I wasn't able to see them so much, which was also kind of a good thing to be in the area. And as I said, my wife finished her PhD, and rather than her getting another job in the UK, we thought, why don't we take the opportunity to travel around a little bit and go see a bit more of the world. We've been in, as I said, I was born in Hong Kong. I moved to the UK at 16. I've got British parents, British passport. And then, so I spent 15 years in the UK, and that was kind of, having been outside the UK, I knew that there was kind of a lot more out there that I wanted to see. It's a big world, and being fortunate enough to travel to places in support of the game, to various locations and stuff, expos and things like that. And again, my wife also, she was desperate to kind of go traveling or backpacking. But because Adventure Pals wasn't finished, that wasn't something I could really do. So we thought, right, why don't we move somewhere for a while, set up shop somewhere where we can do those things, but kind of I can work during the week. And so I know a lot of people do what's called digital nomading, where they move to, say, Thailand, and they work on their laptops from the beach. That was something we thought about, but
that sounds so cool.
Yeah, but that would mean that she'd have to take kind of a career break just as she finished her PhD.
Yeah.
So we kind of looked into it, and we thought about different places, and we found Vancouver, so she works in the kind of environmental field, just to kind of quickly explain it. So here there's a huge amount of industry for that. It's very, very environmentally conscious. There's a lot of NGOs and companies and things here. That's good for that. Plus, there's a huge indie game scene in Vancouver. It's amazing.
I know. I was going to talk about that.
Right. So we can get onto that in a sec for sure. But it's also incredibly beautiful. You can kind of, there's so much wildlife here. It's just an amazing part of the world. And we moved at the beginning of the winter, and my goodness, it almost broke us. It was just raining nonstop, and we thought, we're from the UK, we can handle rain. Not like they have it in Vancouver. It's a little different.
Wow.
Yeah, but the summers are here now, and it is blazing hot, and it is incredible. So we're really happy here. We might have to move along again soon. And obviously our family's base is still in the UK, and Massive Monster's still based in the UK. So,
well, I think that a lot of indie game lovers would be surprised by how many games come out of Canada. It's wild. A lot of my indie game friends are from Canada, and their studios they're funded by the government, I think.
That's right.
In a lot of ways.
Yeah, so it depends.
What's that all about?
It depends which state or province you're in.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't remember which one it is, but some of them offer things like up to 50% of your employees' salaries back in tax credits. I believe.
Wild.
I think that's Toronto. And then there are all sorts of crazy, amazing program funding things for game development that are based here, which is just so good. And so, so like I mentioned, Clay, who made Don't Starve, are here. Also, Matt Thorson's here, who made Towerfall, of course, and Celeste. And I mean, those are just kind of the two that popped to my head. But there's also a bunch of mobile phone game developers like Hothead Games and others that are all based in Vancouver, which is a tiny city. So it's a really cool place to be if you're making video games. And so they have meetups, full indie, which if anyone's here, I definitely recommend you can go. I went along kind of by myself, so kind of didn't know quite what to do. I didn't know anyone, and then I kind of pulled out the Adventure Pals, and everyone kind of flocked around, and it was fantastic. I got to meet lots of people. I think if you until people see your game, they don't really know, is this guy for real or not? Is he? Well, so at least I got that out, and that was great. And then recently we had Twitch Vancouver, where the Adventure Pals was also featured, and that was full of amazing people as well. So I got to meet a whole bunch of people there as well. So it's great. There's a lot of indie game stuff happening up here.
Yeah. So you're a well-traveled guy. You've been in North America, Europe, and then you grew up in Asia, which is wild. You want to tell me about Hong Kong?
Yeah, I mean, Hong Kong was just a brilliant place to grow up in. It was, I think it's really different now. My parents are still there, and they tell me that it's different. It's a different place now. Like when I was there, it was kind of,
yeah, that's what I've heard.
Yeah, right. So the handover was in '97, and I was born in '86. So I had like a good 10, 11 years of growing up there. Although we had a year or two in Lhasa in Tibet. When my parents, they kind of like to travel around as well. They ran like the Holiday Inn in Lhasa in Tibet.
What? That's awesome.
I was a toddler in Tibet, and I had blonde hair, and all the locals would like touch my hair.
Who's this white guy?
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome.
What is this crazy? He's like, he looks old, but he's a baby. What? Why has he got white hair? So that was really cool. So it was a brilliant place to grow up. Like it's very like tech advanced, very international. I went to an international school. Mm-hmm. Most of my friends were from all over the world, really from all over the world. So I think my best friend for a while was Malaysian. I had a friend from Nigeria. I had my Dutch best friend as well for a while. And from obviously from Hong Kong as well. So it was an amazing kind of melting pot. So when I went to the UK, it was a bit of a culture shock, where it's a much less integrated society. And maybe I was fooling myself a little bit because it was an international school. So really it was a Western environment. But it was very bizarre coming to the UK, where there's a very different attitude, or at least in the school that I went to, towards people from different countries and different backgrounds and things like that. But yeah, and then it's a lot of fun. You can get up to loads of trouble when you're a kid as well, because it's very safe. Like there's great transport, so you can go off, have beach parties and sneak into bars and do all sorts of fun stuff. And I just kind of tinkered, and I decided, like, wouldn't it be fun if I could make a game? Nothing more than that. And I made a game, and I discovered while I was making it that you could auction these games on a website called FGL, which is still around, but you would put your game out there and people would bid on it. And it was very exciting because it was real money, and the bids would go up, and there'd be a bidding war. And
why don't I know about this? I did not do this.
You did not know about this? Oh my god!
No, FGL.
FGL.
I was just into Newgrounds all day.
Well,
that's where I was launching my stuff.
Well, you still launch, but this is how you found a sponsor.
Oh my goodness, I was such an idiot, dude. I'm always way behind.
But I think this must have been back in like 2011 or something like that. So it might have been like something. I can't remember when Coma was, but it might have been after
Coma. 2009. But the thing is, the sponsors flooded in regardless. When I launched on Newgrounds, like I remember, it was the best feeling in the world. I got an email from, I think it was Armor Games, and they were like, in which they published Pinstripe, and they also published Adventure Battles. I think they emailed me and they're like, "We'll pay you $1,000 to do an exclusive sponsorship."
Like,
yes.
It was
I think it was a non-exclusive, and I was like, yes, right away, yes. And so they paid me, and I went to the pool with my friends, and I was 18. I was like, guys, I just got $1,000 for selling a game, and they thought it was like the coolest thing ever. And I think that's the moment for me when I was like, this is what I want to do, because this is what's crazy is like I was in a band, and I got the same sort of rush of being on stage playing for people.
Yeah.
When I got that check, I was like, I'm kind of a rock star. Like I'm a rock star, like I'm an indie artist, but in a different way.
Right.
Is that how you felt?
I feel like it's exactly the same thing. And like running, or not running, because obviously we're partners, but like doing the company, it feels like it's still the band. Like it's a continuation from managing the band and like trying to get shows and get things organized and having creative people who inspire you. And so yeah, I mean, it's 100% the same thing. I see it as like a direct continuation from that.
So it was in your teenage years when you realized you wanted to be a game developer.
Wait, hang on. No, it was very early 20s, I think. Like basically where I didn't want to be a game developer when I made that first game. And then I made money out of it. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to still carry on like pursuing what I'm going to do. And I didn't, like, after the band, I didn't really have a clear direction. I kind of thought, right, I did a degree in government politics. Like maybe I could be some kind of think tank, or so I was pursuing a PhD, and I got funding for that. And then I sold another game. And at that point, I deferred my place and canceled it. And I was like, right, this is me. I'm going to do this. But there was a moment when I was having dinner with Fiona, and so she has become my wife since. And she just kind of said to me, like, why don't you just do this? Why don't you just do the games? And this like intense feeling of like stress came over me. And I think it was just me going, yeah, why don't I do this? I could just like, like, why? I'm such an idiot. Why didn't I think of this? Like, obviously this is what I should do.
It's crazy how that happens, dude. Like for me, so many missed opportunities, or at least opportunities that were right in front of my face. It took me like 2 years to actually pursue them. And like the fact that I missed out on this FGL thing just baffles me.
Well, I mean, to be fair to you, it was a good way to meet sponsors. So I think I did one game on that. And then after my second game, I just went directly to the sponsors and said, like, this is the game. And I think one of them said, like, put it on FGL and we'll bid it. And the other one was like, I'll just give you an offer right now. And I was like, that offer will do. Thank you very much.
Well, Jay, explain what a sponsor is for the listeners who don't know that era.
Yeah,
perhaps.
right. So the Flash gaming ecosystem was kind of full of like people who just kind of had access to a program called Flash, where they could kind of very easily make games with like and learn their craft as they went. And I think this has been so valuable to developers like me and you as well, and a lot of the people who are now making indie games. But what would happen is you'd create this game, and a company such as I'm just trying to think, Armor Games, obviously we should mention them because they are publishers for our
Newgrounds, Antcon Games,
right.
Congregate.
Sure. Those guys would then pay you a certain amount of money to put their logo at the beginning of the game. And what that meant is that your game was essentially an advertisement for their website. So it would drive traffic to their website. And because this was kind of at the very, either before mobile gaming really took off or like at the very beginning of it, people to play games would go to these websites, and they would sit in like when they should be in IT class or whatever, like playing these little games.
I want to hear in the comments, if any of you was the student, like the high school student who would play games in the library before class started, like I did. Please let me know in the comments, because it was such a nostalgic time. Yeah. Like for me, like I would get to school early. And I think you're a little bit older than me, but like I would get to school early, and you'd play a Flash game where like you shoot Osama bin Laden, and then you hang out in the library and read manga or something. Like that was like what every teenager did, or at least the nerdy teenagers like I was.
Right.
You'd get on addictinggames.com or tgames.com was super fun. I don't know if you ever went to T Games, but T Games was like this super. Like their brand was so distinct. It wasn't like going to indie game or addictinggames.com and seeing like this plethora of like random crap. T Games was like one or two developers, and they made these skateboard games. Like you could skateboard. They also made a bicycle game where you rode a bike. Nice. It was kind of like a trials game, but they had a brand that looked very, I don't know how to describe it, but I think it was like a European company. Like they were based in like London or Scotland or something. And it looked very medieval. I don't know how to explain it, but it was just really classy looking. And their colors were always green and brown and gray. What happened though was they were like the one website where everything was consistent. And it was like a badge of honor for Flash games. Like these guys make Flash games and they're very, very good. What happened is I think they sold out just like you and I sold out in a way. They were like, they got money waved in front of their face, and I think they sold to a company, and then immediately, like a week later after they sold out to a company, it basically turned into a Congregate or an Addicting Games, where just a bunch of games would appear on the site, just crap games. The majority of Addicting Games were pretty crappy. But that was like a huge high point in my life. I was in middle school at the time, actually. And just being able to play those games for free with your friends sort of sitting over your shoulders on these clunky computers was a special feeling, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And there were so many ideas as well, so many cool ideas. And it's so cool that like so many of the people who were making those things are now kind of making console stuff. Like it kind of says something that, you know, Coma started its life as a Flash game. Adventure Pals started its life as a Super Adventure Pals. Never Give Up started its life as a Give Up 2 as a Flash game. And like take, for example, on the Switch, Snipper Clips. That's made by Tom Van and his brother, and they were the Super Flash Brothers. And they started out in Flash games, you know, and it's really cool that this kind of has kind of gone on to be indie games kind of as we know it. And the amazing thing about it as well is you get to make a game every 2 or 3 months from start to finish, and you learn so much from that. You learn so much, and you know, I'm sure if you go back and you look at your early games, you're like, oh my God, what was I thinking? And we're kind of lucky to have that like learning cycle where it's like, okay, I'm making this, now I'm going to make this. Okay, well that didn't work. Next game, you know, and within a year you put out 4 or 5 games, and they'd all like, you know, you'd be learning from that, and that kind of informs the games that we make today. And I think if I was trying to start now, going from 0 to console games, there'd be a huge like educational gap and experience gap.
Exactly. Well, and what's cool, and then we can move on to cheat codes. What's cool is Flash games are like the perfect prototype. They don't take a long time, like maybe 3 months to work on. For me, I think it took me 6 months to make Coma, but that was like while I was in school. So like, you know, you release this game and then you can get a feeling of whether it's if it has a virality to it. You know, you could figure out if it's actually being enjoyed. The problem with Pinstripe, for example, which was not a Flash game, it was just a game that I wanted to make. I spent 5 years on it, and it was a huge risk because there was no prototype. I wasn't converting a Flash game into a Steam game or a console game. So the risk, I was lucky because it was actually successful, but it was a super risky move to make.
But I mean, I see so much of what you did in Coma, and I'm blanking. There was another one.
Skinny,
yeah. In Pinstripe, like I see what you've learned, and you've put it into Pinstripe. Definitely. I mean, like there wouldn't be a Pinstripe if there wasn't Coma and Skinny.
That's true. There is a distinct style, I guess, that I did learn when I was doing Flash games. That's true. So that's this portion of the podcast. Now, for those of you who are listening and you want to listen to the remaining portion of the podcast, and that portion is called Cheat Codes, head on over to my Patreon page. You can click the link in the description. Head on over to the Patreon page and subscribe. There's a tier. I think it's probably I haven't even launched the Patreon page as I'm recording this, but it's probably going to be a $10 or a $15 tier. If you subscribe as a Patreon supporter, you can actually listen to the remaining portion of this podcast. And this is a huge part of the podcast, and this is called Cheat Codes. And cheat codes are basically 3 cheats that Jay is going to give to you about what he has learned in the indie game industry. And these are things that a lot of us don't actually know about, but that once you figure them out, they actually give you a leg up in the industry. So thank you guys for listening so much. Please click the like button, subscribe button, and feel free to comment in the comments below, and Jay and I will answer as many questions as we can. Thank you.